All right. Okay. Had a little glitch of some kind where the streaming stopped for a moment, but we are with you. Always with our Instagram audience. As long as my phone is working, I'm with you guys, even when some of the studio apparatus doesn't quite do what it's supposed to do. If you all notice, I'm not sitting in my big chair today because actually I found a more comfortable small chair. And I said, well, I'm going to try that out because then you can read the title, Save America, and try that. And you'll notice I'm wearing one of my new style shirts for the program. I got several of them that I'll be wearing just to kind of highlight what we're doing here. So God is moving and everything is going wonderful. I want to remind everybody again of a couple of salient facts. One is our Stand Awards dinner is coming up. I guess you can see that on Instagram there. There you go. That looks actually, that's not too bad. And that's coming up on June the 11th at Cornerstone Chapel. Pray for us. We are beginning to put together our sponsors, and it's really shaping up to be a wonderful event. Our honorees, of course, you know what? Actually, I think everybody can see it that way. But we got Brigitte Gabrielle, we got Johnny Hunter, we got Sandy Rios, we've got Pastor Gary Hambrick, and of course the late Reverend Dean Nelson. Tickets are $125. Sponsorships are available. Sponsorships start at $50,000. This is our biggest fundraiser of the year. So sponsorships start at $50,000 for what we call the presenting sponsor. Actually, they start at $100,000. You know what? This is an old one. We got a $100,000 matching grant sponsor because we've had that the last 2 years. We're believing God to have that again this year, the $100,000 matching grant sponsor. Now, that didn't happen because we planned it. It just kind of spontaneously happened. And who knows, man. Now that we're trying to make sure it happens. We'll see. But we'll believe for the grace of God for it to happen again this year, because that's a big part of what makes the dinner really work for us and become a major fundraiser for us. George Washington sponsorship is $25,000. Andrew Womack Ministries has already come back as a George Washington sponsor. We can have more than one. Thomas Jefferson sponsor, $10,000. James Robinson, Life Today, has already come back as a Thomas Jefferson sponsor. We can have more of those. We got James Madison sponsors. We got George Mason sponsors. The Patrick Henry sponsor at $1,500. A lot of people can handle that, and we would hope that a lot of people would do that. Remember, with the dinner, you don't have to come. We want you to come, of course, and we hope you will come. But what we do is, because many of our sponsors live out of town. I mean, you know, we've got literally sponsors from all over the country, people who support our work from all over the country, and they simply can't. I just want to make sure our sound is good. Yeah, everything looks good there. They simply can't get there. I mean, it's not feasible for them. Now, there are sponsors who come in from out of town, and they do get there, and they fly in, stay at a hotel. So we're going to have, obviously, hotel accommodations. We have some reserved rooms for our guests. Most of the people who come are people from around the area. If you don't know the history of this, when we started this out, just as a backup, because I'm a member of an organization that meets, generally speaking, in May, and so a lot of the people in that organization are friends and supporters, and so we dovetailed it on that organization's meeting because we knew that a lot of those people would already be in town or be coming to town and wouldn't have a problem coming to our dinner because, I mean, it was right next door to where the meeting was held. Well, this time, the meeting is not being held in May. We don't have a meeting until July, and so our dinner's in June, and we couldn't hold our dinner up until July. We just couldn't do that. That just wasn't logistically feasible. And the opportunity to hold it at Cornerstone Chapel came up through the graciousness of Pastor Gary Hambrick, and so that's where we're going to have it this year. And we're believing God that members of his congregation will show up, and people from all over Virginia, and some people from around the country will be coming as well. We're looking forward to that. As you know, of course, all of our honorees are from outside our area. There's not a single honoree. Well, there's one honoree. Let me say that more accurately. There's one honoree which is Pastor Gary Hambrick, who's going to be right there. That's his church. But the others are all coming from Louisiana, Florida. Well, actually, Brigitte Gabrielle is coming from somewhere closer, a little bit closer by. I don't get into exactly where she resides because she's, of course, as you know, being an outspoken opponent of the influence of Islam in our country, she has suffered some serious threats. And believe me, I can relate to that. But it's going to be a great event, folks. And I hope all of you have it on your calendar and all of you plan to come and celebrate with us. This is 15 years we've been laboring in the vineyard. And I'll just be very honest with you, folks. It's been a faith walk. It has not been a cakewalk. It's not easy. I'm not a multimillionaire that can just throw millions of dollars into this organization and just, so regardless of what happens, it's got plenty of revenue. I'm not in that position. We have depended upon the generosity of our donors, large and small, our grassroots donors as well as some of our major donors. And we've done it for 15 years, and the budget has grown continually with a couple of downturns, but the budget has grown continually. Well, in fact, to be very honest, this economy is having an impact on all of the conservative nonprofits that I'm aware of. All of them are having it, some less than others because they are so big. But I remind you, folks, in case you're not aware of this, some of you watching may be, but some of you may not be. I worked for the Christian Coalition once as one of its directors, with a top staff person, working with Pat Robertson and Ralph Reed. And the Christian Coalition in 1996 was probably the largest, or certainly one of the largest, because the Heritage Foundation is always, I think, at the top of the heap, because they've just got a gargantuan organization at Heritage. But others have come along that have, multi-million-dollar budgets. I mean, Turning Point USA is one of those organizations. Who else am I thinking of that's really got, Prager University, which is a conservative organization. They've got a very, very big budget. But the Christian Coalition in 1996 was a gargantuan organization. It was really one of those top tier conservative organizations financially, okay? And in 2 years, it was over. Just like that. Just like that, it turned around. And I won't get into the speculation and analysis of exactly what happened, but it went from being at the very top, a very top tier organization to now there is no Christian Coalition. Now Ralph Reed has created something called the what is it called? The Faith and I forget what the name of it is, frankly, but it'll come to me. I've spoken. That's terrible. I don't mean to in any way minimize them. Faith and Freedom, the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Because I wanted to say Faith and Family, but it's Faith and Freedom Coalition. And that's kind of replaced the Christian Coalition. I think it's an organization of a little bit different tenor, but that's kind of replaced it. So there is something out there, but that came after many years. That came many years after the Christian Coalition had folded. I'm saying all this to simply say we can't take our existence as an organization for granted and assume that, well, because you got plenty of money or because of this, that, or the other, nothing will ever happen and it won't, No, things can go wrong. And it depends upon the loyalty and commitment of our supporters. We will always endeavor to do those things that we really believe honor you, honor God first and foremost, but honor you by demonstrating integrity, not only in the things that we stand for, but in the way we run the organization, frugality, and trying to make sure that the organization runs in a way that we're not just wasting money and throwing money away on a variety of different things, but really spending the money as wisely as we can. And I found out in 15 years there are lots of places, not intentionally, but there are lots of ways you can waste money. You think you're spending money wisely, you realize it's a boondoggle. Because people see an organization, they see a pot of money, and they think, oh man, we can make some money off these people. And that's not true for everybody, obviously. So there are many people out there who operate with honor and integrity and are really trying to be of service. But there's sharks out there who see Christian ministry and Christian nonprofits as just an opportunity to dip in the well and get their share. And the same, just like with campaigns, the consultants come and they pounce because they think, oh, here's some money we can make. We're dedicated to the cause. We need money to run the organization. So please don't mistake me. I'm not minimizing the importance of our financial needs, but we're not in it for money. We're in it to serve the country. We're in it to help save America. That's why we do what we do. Thank you for your support. Please continue that support. And you can do that by supporting the dinner. Now, if you may say, well, I'm out of town and I don't have $125, but I can do something. Well, make a contribution, okay? Make a contribution to the dinner. It's an opportunity for you to express your support, even though you can't be at the dinner and maybe you can't buy a ticket. If you can buy a ticket but you can't be there, buy a ticket and say, hey, I'm buying this ticket, but I'm donating it to somebody. I want somebody else to have it because I can't be there. So we'll accommodate you in whatever ways we can, but we certainly are grateful for your support. Appreciate it very much. StandAmerica.us. This is this a major project right now of America's Forgotten Children, all these murdered children across the country, 600 now since the death of George Floyd, nearly 600 since the death of George Floyd, innocent kids being murdered. Out of that is growing well, actually, the primary thing growing out of that is the Family Restoration Institute, a curriculum that we're developing to give to churches so that they can begin to teach young people what it takes to make a great family, what it takes to make an effective family, to pass on the values that are important to the next generation. So we're working on that. We've also got a project that's not listed here called REACH, which is the Revolt to End Anti-Christian Hatred. And I've been talking about that as we go along, all these instances where people are just trashing Christianity. Joe Biden just did it on Easter Sunday, Resurrection Sunday, where he went to this whole transgender visibility garbage. And people say, well, it was always happening on that day. Well, first of all, happening when? I mean, when did the country vote or have our representatives vote to have a homosexual, trans, garbage, lying, disgusting notion that people can change their gender holiday to celebrate that, to make that more visible? That doesn't need to be more visible, it needs to be invisible. And send the drag queens, everybody else, right back to their closet. They can go in the closet with anybody who wants to go in there with them and leave the rest of us alone. Yeah, that's the way I feel about it. I mean, because it's sick, it's disgusting, it's filthy, it's immoral. And God loves these people, but they're not just trying to live their lives. They're trying to push it on you and me and our children, all of our institutions. I was flipping through the television, I forget when it was, but we're just trying to just relax a little bit and just, and there's some a court scene on where the attorney is examining somebody. He says to this guy, yeah, well, tell how long you've been married to your husband. And I think, every time I see that or hear that, it just almost makes you want to upchuck, because you think, how can a man have a husband? It's in defiance of all logic, all vocabulary, all history, all tradition, but most importantly, it is in defiance against Almighty God. A man, he's got a husband, and a woman, she's got a wife. I mean, give me a break. The stuff is just, it's insane. But here again, there it is, when you wouldn't expect to find it, being put. Oh, and by the way, ask as if this is perfectly normal. How long have you, Mr. Man, been married to Mr. Man, Mrs. Man, your husband? Lord, deliver us, help us, Jesus. I remember Psalm 1, Isaiah 1, I think it's verse 9, that says, unless the Lord had left to us a very small remnant, we would have become like Sodom. We would have been made like Gomorrah. Thank God we got a remnant of people like you and me that are standing up for for reality as God has set it forth for us. And we're not trying to accommodate this liberal, la-la land, horrific fantasy, this horror fantasy that the left is trying to create and demand that all of us live in. I don't want to live in your horror show. I don't want to live in your immoral fantasy. And I'm not doing it. And I'm not going along with it, ever. Okay. All right. I think that covers, that we got into a little bit of a polemic about these issues, but I mainly started out talking about our dinner. And don't forget, my book is still available to you, and I'm still signing books, and people are still signing up to be Patriot Partners. Oh, one other thing I got to mention to you. I will be speaking at Fairview Baptist Church this coming Sunday. So, yes, that's true. I know what you're thinking. So you will not be at 943 Canal Drive. That's true. I will not be at 943 Canal Drive. I will be at Fairview Baptist Church. Fairview Baptist Church is in... now, this is terrible. Let me see. Whatever. I think I'm doing something wrong here, which is why I don't see the information that I need to see. But let me see if I can overcome this here. Okay. Fairview Baptist Church is in Edmond, Oklahoma. I know that's right outside of Oklahoma City, if I'm not mistaken. I think we're flying into Oklahoma City. But that's in Edmond, Oklahoma, at 1230 North Sooner Road, Edmond, Oklahoma. I'll be speaking at the 8:30 service and the 11 a.m. service. The pastor is Pastor Paul Blair. He is a dear friend, a great Christian, a great patriot, and he has invited me to come and hold forth at their church, Fairview Baptist Church, also called, by the way, Liberty Church of Edmond, Liberty Church of Edmond. So looking forward to that, folks. If you are in the Oklahoma area, or you know someone, Oklahoma City area, you know someone who is, or you know someone in Oklahoma, maybe you don't know quite where they live. I got a lot of friends out in Oklahoma, and I got to make sure I tell them I'm going to be there for that day for those two services. Okay, wow, that took longer than I would have planned, but we'll be led by the Spirit here. So two things, and I've got plenty of time to get to these two things, and maybe need not take up all my time. The first thing I want to deal with is something you probably don't expect me to deal with, and that is we had two events within the space of a week. We had an earthquake in Pennsylvania, in the Northeast. Apparently it stretched from New York to Pennsylvania. I think it went into Connecticut. And into Boston. Yeah, because someone very dear to me, in fact, some people very dear to me said that they felt it in Boston. So it hasn't been an earthquake of this kind of character in that area for over 100 years. This is not California, where if you don't get an earthquake, you're surprised. Now, Jesus said in various scriptures, but I'm quoting Mark 13:8, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And by the way, that word nation is actually the Greek word ethnos. Ethnos. Our word ethnicity comes from it. So really what this is getting at tribal, racial, ethnic conflict, which of course the left is pushing all over the world. All over the world, the left is pushing tribal, ethnic, racial conflict. It says, for nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Now that kingdom, that goes to state operators, countries, nations, empires, kingdom against kingdom. And there will be earthquakes in various places. Earthquakes in various places. And I really believe when Jesus said various places, he was emphasizing something that he knew, which is there are places that are known for earthquakes, and there are places that are not known for earthquakes. And there would be earthquakes in various places, places that are known for earthquakes and places that are not known for earthquakes. And we just had an earthquake that in a place that's not known for earthquakes. And here's the second thing, of course, the eclipse. The eclipse. And I've been asked about this. We know what the scriptures say about this. Now, I don't believe that these things, okay, are indicative of something's going to happen tomorrow, or we're now at the end of the world. But I really do believe that these are signs that Jesus pointed to say, when you see these things begin to happen, and they begin to happen with greater frequency, he said, look up, your redemption is drawing near. In other words, the time is getting closer, because he said things would wax worse and worse. They would get worse and worse. Iniquity would abound. The love of many would grow cold, and so on and so forth. So there are many, many signs. In fact, our church is studying right now the book of Revelation. We're 85% through it. Just finished up chapter 19. So I've only got 3 more chapters to go, and I will have finished our study in the book of Revelation. I think we've been working on it for probably, I don't know, a year and a half or so, because I can't preach on the Revelation every Sunday. Just like with Palm Sunday and Easter, I got to, deal with some of the Christian holidays that we have to address, and other things, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and so on and so forth, that, sometimes we have to address, and sometimes they're guest speakers, and sometimes, of course, from time to time, I'm away. But we're almost there. We're 85% finished with the book of Revelation. And so if you want a good study on the book of Revelation, this one will provide you one. And I think it's better than many that I've read, or many efforts that I've heard to try to parse through everything, because there are some times when I get into the details of the book of Revelation, but very often what I'm doing is trying to give people a kind of overview, a way of looking at the book of Revelation, a way of trying to understand it, because I think the biggest problem with the book of Revelation is people don't understand it. And many people think you can't understand it, but you can understand it. Much of it is symbolism, but the symbolism points you somewhere. Now, you're not going to get every detail answered and every little nitpicky thing dealt with, because that's not the way the book of Revelation, I believe, is expected to be read. God expects us to read it or study it or understand it. I think it's intended to give us a picture of what the Great Tribulation looks like, what the end times look like. And of course, it is the Word of God. It does that extremely effectively. Okay, so Joel chapter 2, verses 28 through 31 say, and it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out. Now that's after in this context, after the inauguration of the last days. Okay, after the inauguration of the last days. God says, I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams. After the last days, after the conclusion of all this. Your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions. Also on my maidservants and my men servants and maidservants, I will pour out my spirit in those days. I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness. Now, this is not part of... This is not after God's judgment is ended and he's inaugurated his kingdom. Obviously, this is leading up to. When you read the scripture, you have to know too. The scripture is often not giving you a chronological account of events. It's giving you flashes of insight into various aspects of events. And you have to sometimes parse through whether it's clear what comes first and what comes second. I believe this blood and fire and vapors of smoke and the sun being turned into darkness and the moon into blood. I believe it says before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. How much before? I believe these are things that are going to be happening more and more. We're going to see odd things happening as we get closer and closer to the end of days. Okay, so in my view, that's the best way to understand that. Not to, okay, well that happened, now this is supposed to happen. But no, that's part of the general trend of human history. And so Jesus says, and the Word of God says here, the sun shall be turned into darkness. Well, that's a picture of an eclipse, isn't it? That's a picture of an eclipse. Now, the book of Revelation talks about this issue, talks about the sun being darkened. Excuse me. You know what? I figured out why I'm sneezing. Have you all noticed it too? A lot of pollen. There's a lot of pollen right now. Woo, a lot. My wife came home from school, and her tires were green. And I thought, what in the world is that? It was pollen. Pollen that her car picked up. Driving in the street, that much pollen on the ground. So that's what's doing it. But I'm fine. I don't have a cold or anything like that. So you put these two things together. You put the eclipse and you put the earthquake together. That's unusual in 1 week. And I think that's exactly what the scripture is getting at. These things happening with greater frequency, with greater attention being paid to them because of the way they happen or the frequency with which they happen. I mean, we've just seen something unusual, because I don't know that there's ever been a moment when there was an eclipse and then a very unusual earthquake in a very unusual place, both happening at the same time. And I really believe that we as Christians should read this as God's sign saying, get ready. It's coming, meaning the final judgment on mankind is coming, and I'm coming. So, do I see spiritual significance in these things? I most certainly do. But I'm not one of these people who tell you, well, you know what, after that, on June 23rd, the world's going to end. I mean, when people get into that kind of foolishness and people follow them, and it just, Jesus said, the blind leading the blind, they both fall into the ditch. So just wanted to get that out of the way. So we're paying attention to these things. Jesus said you can read the signs of the sky. I just read it yesterday, where he was telling the children of Israel, and telling those who were listening to him, you look at the sun, you look at the sky, and you see the clouds, and you say, there's going to be rain. And then he said, you see an east wind. I think he said east wind. He said, you say it's going to be hot. He said, well, you can read the signs of the sky, but why can't you read the signs of the times? So he was saying that just as the coming weather produces precursors that you can read to predict what weather is coming, Jesus is saying the spiritual weather is predictable in the sense that you can see the signs of the times and say, yeah, we can see which way this is going. Okay? All right, that's number one. Number two, the economy itself. There's a big to-do about the jobs report. I think over 300,000 jobs added, a lot more than people were expected. And the Biden administration always jumps on this and says, see, look at what a great job we're doing with the economy. Why aren't you all dancing in the streets and rejoicing that you got a great president who is doing such a great job with the economy, and everybody's things are just going gangbusters? Well, that's a lie. It's a lie. It is a lie. Our economy is a mess. Now, does it have some strengths? Yes, it does. But look, folks, let me just make something clear. The strength of the economy is the values of the American people, who are entrepreneurial and productive and energetic and creative and inventive and innovative. I mean, the American people are a juggernaut that is constantly pushing for progress. That's really the key to the American economy. It's not what the government is doing. It's what the American people are doing. It's those values instilled in us as Americans to keep working, to keep trying. You all ever watch this program, The Food That Made America? My wife introduced me to it. It comes on Sunday afternoons, and so sometimes we watch that after we get home from church, because it's really fun to watch. But it's interesting to hear the story told of how people created things that we now take for granted. Burger King, McDonald's, Sara Lee baked goods, hot dogs. I mean, all of this stuff that kind of took the country by storm. But then you hear the backstory of the people who were thinking and working and innovating and borrowing and saving and spending and going broke and doing it again. But, and then ultimately, of course, in most of these cases, in all these cases, achieving this monumental success. But it all goes back to what was in the heart of the person in just being absolutely determined. And very often based on a reading of what the American people want or need and thinking, well, nobody has that. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's asking for that. But the American people, when they realize it's available, they will go for it. You know, like the whole tasty cakes and you know, ready-made pastries that you can buy in the store, the supermarket. Of course, we know there are all kinds of additives in the stuff now. We could get into that. That's a whole different discussion. But that stuff didn't exist. And so suddenly somebody has this idea, you know what? If I can make a cake that people can buy over the counter, they can eat during their lunch, they can take with them for a snack, the American people will buy that. And guess what? But these ideas that people came up with, the American people did buy it. So my point is, please, Joe Biden, and this goes for Donald Trump as well. I mean, it's the American people who are really responsible for the juggernaut of an economy that we have that is resilient against even idiots like Joe Biden who are busy trying to destroy the economy, in my view. Okay? And this economy, again, folks, is not good. Yeah, the stock market is going up. No question about that. Jobs are being added. No question about that. But when you peel off the surface and you look at what's really going on, you realize, oh my goodness, it's not looking nearly as good. You realize 20% of the jobs that they claim to be added were given to foreign nationals. You realize we have the largest percentage of people in our country who were not born in America of any time in our history. We've got over 50 million people in our country today who were not born here. 50 million. Many of those people are not citizens. But you know what? Those people are taking those jobs. Now you say, well, but obviously those jobs need to be filled and somebody's got to take them. But here's what you don't hear the Biden administration talk about. The influx of all of this additional labor drives down the price of labor because you have more people competing for these jobs, even though these people are not American citizens. So that's number one, okay? 20% of these jobs are going to foreign nationals. And I don't want to hear this stuff. Well, you know, the American people don't want to do those jobs. Folks, I walk into airports. I get into an Uber. All kinds of circumstances where you got service workers go into a hotel and you got people who can barely speak English. You can't tell me that the American people don't want those jobs. But here's the thing. You can pay less to these foreign nationals. So what it's doing is it's suppressing wages. It is making it harder for the average American worker to have their ends meet because their wages are being driven down by foreign competition, people coming into the country. That's why I have absolutely, I used to be a member of the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce, and I ultimately got out of that because I realized something. Those people are not for America. Those people are not. They're for business. Now, I'm not saying there aren't any patriots involved in that, but you take the National Chamber of Commerce, I mean, those people, as far as I'm concerned, are traders. They sell their grandmama down the river for $1. The organization, because they're all bound up with communist China, and they're big on illegal. They want as many illegal immigrants to come as they can. They're going to support Joe Biden. Why wouldn't they? Because he's helping them dismantle the country that we know and love, so that they think they can pick up the bones and the fragments that are left over, and maybe everybody else will be in bad shape, but they think they'll be in good shape. I mean, it's just really some stupid thinking. You know, the Bible says in Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, the people perish. Well, that's just number one. Here's number two. You know how many manufacturing jobs were in that increase? 0. Not one added manufacturing job. And guess where we get all of our manufactured products from for the most part? communist China, which means we are dependent upon a foreign enemy. I mean, let's face it, China is not just an adversary. China is an enemy. We are dependent upon a foreign enemy for our manufactured goods. That is not a healthy place to be. In fact, it's a suicidal place to be. If there's ever a real conflict, I mean a serious conflict, things heat up between us and China. So they don't tell you that either. I mean, here's the other thing. A lot of those jobs that they've added, those are jobs that people are working as part of a multiple job career because they can't make ends meet on a single job. So you got Americans holding 2 and 3 jobs, trying to feed their families, trying to stay alive. And again, folks, God bless Americans. I mean, they want to work. They'll get out there and do it. But that's not the way it's supposed to be, because you don't have time left for your family. You don't have time. You don't have energy left to rest. I mean, it's a very unhealthy situation where you're forced to work 2 or 3 jobs just to get by. And I'm not talking now about just young people starting out. My wife and I did it. And sure, there are times in life when you have to do that. I'm talking about people who should be further along in their lives. But what they found is that between inflation and suppressed wages, that they don't have any choice if they're going to try to do the things for their family that they need to do. Not just when they're talking about luxuries, that they need to do. And here's the other thing that they're not telling you about the economy. Young people, unless you come from money and your parents are willing to front you a big down payment, young people can't buy a house. The interest rate has now priced young people out of the housing market. Now, I know the housing industry is still growing. Houses are still being sold. But I, in fact, talked to a friend of mine and my wife's who is a realtor, and she was saying to us, it's tough. But you know who's buying up houses? People who can afford to pay cash for them. Chinese investors. Yeah, Chinese investors are buying up houses, folks. Why are they buying houses in America? It's not just for the investment. You better believe it's about more than that. It's about being in a position to undermine our national security. I'm not talking about American citizens who happen to be Chinese. I'm talking about Chinese nationals. People who are here not with a dedication to or loyalty to America, but they are here with a dedication and loyalty to communist China. You know, and that brings me to another thing, and then I'll come to a wrap up. So what is our biggest threat? I would say our 2 biggest threats in our country are these. Our spiritual and moral condition, that is our biggest threat. You say, well, but that's kind of, an intangible. Yeah, but you know what, folks? If a reading of history will tell you, any leader, any general, any warrior will tell you that the success and outcome of a nation and army has more to do with the morale of the people than it does to do with the materials that they have. When Hitler marched into France and took France over in 6 weeks, it was not because France lacked the ammunition. It was not because France lacked the army. It was not because France lacked the finances in order to wage war against Hitler. It was because France was already demoralized. As a nation, they were already demoralized. It had been happening over 20 or 30 years of people being told, well, France is not important, the global world is. Same garbage we're hearing in our country. We got to think more globally. No, we got to think about America. Yeah, you can call me a Christian nationalist, guilty as charged. And what you mean by that, because it's not what I mean by that, what you mean by that is I love my country. I love the American people. As an American citizen, I feel I have a stewardship responsibility to make sure that our country is taken care of, that our country is secure, that our people are safe. Yeah, so you want to call that, and I believe that America is a gift from Almighty God. Yeah, so if that's your definition of me being a Christian nationalist, guilty as charged. Did you hear about these people out in Dearborn, all these Muslims out in Dearborn chanting death to Israel, death to America? These people live in our country. Some of these people are American citizens. Which I've always said, How stupid can you get? Because if you say, I want America to collapse, it's going to fall on your head, dummy. Not you as a dummy, not you, but you know what I mean? The people who say that stupid stuff. Death to America. Well, who do you think is going to die with America? You're here. I mean, how stupid can you be? But sadly, when patriotism is likened to xenophobia, racism, and unhealthy, hateful nationalism, so not loving your country now is virtuous. Loving your country is vice. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20 to 22. Evil is good, good is evil. Darkness is light, light is darkness. Bitter is sweet, sweet. That's what we're dealing with. So I'd say the number one challenge to our country is our spiritual and moral condition. Getting to a point where we are confident in who we are, why we are, and what we stand for, what we represent, and a willingness to defend that even to the death. And that's got to be dealt with. But here's the other practical side of that in terms of the challenges we're facing. We're being infiltrated from within. And we got 50 million people here who were not born in America. We got Chinese nationals flooding across the border. We got Chinese anchor babies raised by communist Chinese parents, but American citizens because they got them into the country, had the baby here. Now the baby's an American citizen. We got people flooding across the northern border now. Last report I saw said 66 different countries represented in those who were trying to get across the northern border. We've got fentanyl coming across the border. We've got drug dealers. We've got human traffickers. We've got terrorists, people who are known terrorist threats to our country coming across the border. I think our second most practical problem is the infiltration from within. I was just saying to my church on Sunday, not far from where our church is, Smithfield. Smithfield is not 25 miles from our church. We got Smithfield Foods owned by Communist China. One of the largest food distribution plants in America. And we've got a foreign enemy that owns it and controls it. I mean, we've got to get a grip. And folks, I'll end with this. And I'm going to talk about Donald Trump's position on life tomorrow. I don't have time to get into it today. But that's why I am 1,000% behind Donald Trump. So let me just make that crystal clear. Whatever critique I may have of him from time to time, whatever I may say about him from time to time, because I'm here again, I'm not a sycophant, okay? I can say whatever I want to say, but I want to make clear that I am 1,000% in support of Donald Trump. And remember, I ran in the primary hoping that maybe lightning would strike and maybe I'd get the nomination. Of course, that wasn't to be. But I also talked about the fact I only saw two candidates who were even worthy of consideration. That was DeSantis and Trump. DeSantis is out, Trump is in, period. Now, Donald Trump understands, I think, the threat to our country. And they hate him for it because they are the threat. They want America to go down. They want America to become a moral and spiritual and economic basket case. Again, they think they're going to pick through the bones and, they're going to be great. The rest of us will have to suffer because we deserve it after all, right? We deserve it. You spoiled Americans, you deserve to suffer. Donald Trump's going to put a stop to all that mess. I don't think Donald Trump is the answer because I think Jesus is the answer. But I think as a president of the United States, the only person who would have been better for 4 years would be me. I know. I shouldn't say that. I mean, I'm joking, of course. I'm nowhere near becoming president of the United States. But there's nobody else out there. I wouldn't, oh no, oh my goodness. And I just hope he chooses a vice presidential candidate who, shares with profound convictions his principles about who we are as a country, where we are as a country and where we need to go as a country. I hope he doesn't compromise and play this diversity, equity, and inclusion game and pick some sort of mealy-mouthed, half-baked, weak-kneed, so-called conservative. Because what we got to be concerned about is what happens after Donald Trump's been president for 4 years. Because you saw what Joe Biden did. He came in and immediately undid everything that Donald Trump did. And of course, all the institutions are already marching in lockstep. So we need longevity in leadership. Obviously, Donald Trump's got 4 years. That's it. He's gone. I don't care what people say about he's going to be a dictator. Oh, give me a break. I mean, Donald Trump's got not the least bit interested in trying to be a dictator of America. But we do have to be concerned about, well, who comes in afterwards? And I've always said I don't have a pick per se, but I want a young gun who is a solid, unshakable conservative. And I don't hear about many of those being out there, frankly, to tell you the truth. I mean, I really believe that Ted Cruz is one of them. I really believe that Josh Hawley is one of them, and there's some others as well. I won't go into names, but we need somebody who we can rely on, who can carry the mantle in 4 years. Okay? But right now, Donald Trump's the man. Donald Trump's the man we need. There's no question about it. Donald Trump this and Donald Trump that. Well, Donald Trump's not Jesus. I already voted for Jesus to be King of Kings and Lord of Lords, okay? Jesus is not running for President of the United States. Donald Trump is. Against one of the worst presidents in the history of this country. One of the most corrupt, lying, deficient individuals I've ever seen in the White House. I mean, he makes Jimmy Carter look efficient and effective as a leader. And that tells you something. He makes Barack Obama, as far left as he is, look at least rational. So we've got to Joe Biden's got to go. We got to vote him out of there. And so we got to be concerned about making sure that the voting apparatus is solid, that it will really reflect what the American people say and not what the Democrats want, because the Democrats are communists, really, for all practical purposes, de facto communists, not de jure, but de facto communists, and they don't care. They don't care what happens on election day as long as the outcome is what they want, and they'll do whatever they think they need to do in order to get that outcome: lie, steal, cheat, kill, for that matter. Yeah, I believe that. If it comes down to it, because power is their God, and when power is your God, you'll do anything to get it and keep it. And not the Democrat Party officially. I mean, I've had death threats. I said Brigitte Gabriel's had death threats. I've never committed a death threat against anybody because I don't want to kill anybody. People on our side don't do that. A, because we believe that our ideas are superior and we're willing to debate things in the marketplace of ideas. And B, as a Christian, you love people. You don't want to hurt them. But they don't feel that way. They don't think that way. We are in their way. So we need to be praying that God will give our country a reprieve from this demonic leadership that we're under, and that we can ultimately not only take the presidency, but take the House, take the Senate, and begin to lead this country out of the dregs we are in, out of the demonic, the abysmal condition that these leftists are trying to impose upon this great nation of ours. God bless you. Gone a little bit over, but it was worth it, at least to me. I hope you feel the same way. So look, here's what we have to do, all of us. Stand up, step up. Stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up. Because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit. Because we are on God's side.